I'm Regina McCann, President of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to be talking about debt, and it's never a fun topic, but we all have it, right? So let's talk about reducing debt. But in order to do that, you have to know it takes commitment and a lot of patience. So obviously we all know it's something that no one wants, but we just pretty much all have at some point in our lives. And it's easy to get into and of course hard to get out of. So the good news is that regardless of the cause and the amount of your debt, there are steps that you can take to manage and overcome it. First, though, you need to remember that there's generally no quick way to get out of debt, no quick fix type of thing. So solving your debt dilemma typically requires time and effort. And of course, again, that word patience. And of course, hard work, which kind of comes into effort, right? Additionally, you may want to address your debt sooner so that you may not be paying more later. But the longer you leave it there, obviously the interest accumulates. So when trying to reduce debt, let's consider the following 8-point game plan. First point, take control now. There's no better time than the present to reduce your debt. We're right around the holiday time right now. And obviously people wind up spending a little bit more than they planned. Hey, I've done it. Oh, here's my budget for the holidays. And then I blow through the budget, right? That just like everyone else, it's kind of a human trait. But it doesn't mean that you can't take control of it and do something about it. So before you do anything, though, you want to evaluate your financial records to determine your income and your expenses. So in one column, you want to list your regular monthly income, like your salary, if you have a pension, Social Security, something like that. In the second column, you want to list all your expenses. So you want to start with your major expenses like your mortgage or your rent, your utilities, your food, your transportation, credit card payments, and student loan payments, if you have any of them. You also want to include any additional cash expenditures as well as any expenses that occur other than monthly, like property taxes and insurance. Property taxes may happen once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on where you live. Insurance obviously could be quarterly or annually or monthly, depending on what type of insurance it is. Point number 2, creating a budget. There's a famous saying, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. It's a common expression and it definitely applies to your finances. So based on your income and your expenses, you should plan and establish a budget that helps you allocate money for all of your categories of spending. You want to look over everything and consider eliminating unnecessary costs. You may also want to ponder the following questions. Why not eat at home instead of dining out? How about renting movies rather than going to the theater? As you go through creating a budget, you want to include the entire family in the process so that they'll better understand your financial situation. You also want to re-examine the numbers with them and look for ways to increase income while trimming expenses. For instance, can somebody else in the family take on a job or a part-time job or after school job type of thing to cover their, Starbucks purchases? I have somebody in mind when I say that. And if you're renting, is it feasible to move to a less expensive housing? Although that's really a challenge right now for everyone. Housing is really a huge expense and trouble finding less expensive housing in this environment. But doesn't mean you can't try, and it doesn't mean it's not doable. All right, so let's look at point number 3. Favorite thing, pay off your credit cards. Let's consider eliminating credit card debt as one of your top priorities because paying it off can give you a lot of flexibility. If you're stretched to the limit now, that means that you have no margin for error, no room to maneuver in an emergency, and also paying down the debt allows you to free up some of your cash flow for other things. Now, one great way to reduce credit card debt is to pay more than the minimum. Do not settle for that nice low number on your bill. Can you pay more? If you can, then you should consider doing so. Also, remember to pay your credit card bills on time. Paying late is another debt sin that you want to avoid, or you will be hit with unnecessary late fees. And the other thing about credit cards is if you are in that credit card debt and you feel like that domino or snowball effect is happening to you where it just keeps accumulating and you can't get ahead of it. Another practice that we tend to talk about is using cash that old-fashioned cash in your pocket. You give yourself a budget for what you're allowed to spend weekly or even daily on outside purchases like, the coffee or the lunch outside. And, once you run out of that cash, you can't spend it, as opposed to putting more on your credit card, because look at the credit card rates that you're paying. Some of them are as high as 20 some percent, like 25%. I've seen 26%. It's crazy. So if you can tackle that credit card debt, really could help you. All right, let's look at point number 4. Reduce the number of credit cards that you have. You should also consider having only a few credit cards and making sure they have the lowest rate available. Don't be afraid to shop around and consolidate your credit card debt by transferring to 1 or 2 cards to get a better rate. The other thing, though, is be careful about that at the same time, because it could impact your credit rating. So long dated credit cards, by closing them could have an impact on your credit rating or your credit score. So just be aware of that. Point number 5, consider not taking on additional debt. Remember what got you into trouble. Handle what you have first before you start adding to your debt. You can do this by resolving that you will only use your credit cards for emergencies over a certain period of time, say like 6 months. For every other purchase, you can use cash or a debit card. Also, credit card debt should be distinguished from so-called good debt, such as like your mortgage, which can be seen as more beneficial because it's tax deductible in some cases and can also be a financial asset. And I kind of already mentioned about the fact of using cash or a debit card. I like cold hard cash better because you actually see it spending, versus when you put it on a card, you don't keep track of it as closely. Point number 6, contact your creditors. If you find yourself in dire consequences, speak directly with the organizations to which you owe money, because they may be willing to arrange a payment schedule that would enable you to temporarily reduce your monthly contributions. Now, if you own a home, ask your mortgage company about a forbearance agreement, which could lower or eliminate payments for a set period of time. But again, be careful about this. It could impact your credit score. Also, number 7, consider credit counselors. You may opt to get help with your situation rather than handling the details yourself. So assistance is available for little or no cost through government programs or credit counseling services that will work with you to develop a long-term plan to pay off debt. However, using these services may have a negative impact on your credit rating. So you may want to consult a financial advisor or investment professional for some input and advice around that conversation. You also ask some friends and relatives for recommendations on financial advisors or other investment professionals. Or you could also contact the Financial Planning Association for those types of lists. Number 8, you want to stay vigilant. Once you've reduced or even paid off your balances, you want to remember to guard against incurring debt again. And I can tell you from talking to many people who have come through this on the other side, they are very protective of that. So if you lack that self-discipline, consider phasing out credit cards and using debit cards instead, and cash. So debt management is a continual process. So stay on top of your situation and try to keep more of your money. So in conclusion, we go back to the phrase that we started with: debt. It's something that no one wants, but just about everyone has. It's easy to get into and hard to get out of. But remember, the good news is that regardless of the cause and the amount of your debt, there are steps you can take to manage and overcome it. And I would say your action item for today is assess your debt. Assess what you on your 2 columns, what you have coming in and what your expenses are, and how can you start to look at attacking that debt, even if it's a little amount, because little amounts grow to bigger amounts. So that would be your call to action today. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Again, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. My website is forgewealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook and YouTube at Forge Wealth, and Instagram, Forge Wealth Management, LinkedIn, Regina McCann-Hess. So make it a great day.